it wasn't like the All Blacks coach or anything.
We're not going to talk about the performance of England in that specific case.
Yeah. I can't remember where Germany came in the Rugby World Cup, but
fair point.
So that was an exciting project, and we've been doing some conference speaking since.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first Smack episode away from home. We spoke to Adam Rowledge in this episode about topics such as the performance of the German rugby team, all the things you do as a Harry Potter fan, and some other less important things such as the UK hospitality business and HR and how employees and employee retainment at the moment should be done. I hope you enjoy. We'll see you next time. Adam, great to have you. Thanks for being on the show, sir.
No, thank you for inviting me.
Great to have you, Adam. I hate to start like this, but I have to because it's the obvious topic at the moment, and you can imagine where I'm going with this. From an outsider point of view, tell me what to think about Brexit, and not necessarily the whole political view, because we obviously don't want to get into the politics of it, but also a little bit connected to the industry, to hotels. Obviously, you're in and around the UK industry. What's it like to be in it? Because from the outside, you'll forgive me for saying this, it's quite funny to watch.
Yeah.
I guess from the inside, it's a little bit of a different story, no?
From the inside, a bit of a different story. Yeah, I think Schadenfreude would be probably the way that you would look at it. But certainly for the industry, I think the general consensus is just get it over with now. And for most people in the UK, quite frankly, it's been dragging on obviously for a long time. And I think the uncertainty is the thing that's causing the most problems now. So whilst we know there are going to be various things we're going to have to deal with as part of whatever deal or no deal or whatever comes out of it. We've got through a lot of things in the past, a couple of world wars amongst other things, as you know. But I think we just need to get on with it and know where we stand so that we can actually make forward plans now.
Is there anything the industry can prepare? Because, I mean, surely, there's obviously tourism and especially in and around the big cities and down by the seaside is a big factor. Is there anything the industry is preparing already, or is it kind of we're literally waiting for a decision because there's so many variables with either outcome?
There are certain things you can do in terms of some due diligence with your supply chain and recruitment and talent and all that good stuff is a massive issue anyway. So any sort of hotel that's worth their salt is going to be doing everything they can to mitigate any possibility of not being able to recruit from certain talent pools. But I think really it is an unknown. Certainly after the referendum itself, when the exchange rate fluctuated significantly at Georgian House, we saw massive upsides to that because it certainly became much more attractive to come to London, which is an expensive city. So there could be positives as well, and businesses obviously need to exploit those. But it's difficult to say until we have some kind of an idea what it's going to look like.
Looking at recruitment, I mean, you're specialized in everything which is around the employee and culture. And what are your tips at the moment when you speak to the local hoteliers, how they can improve to be able to stay competitive in recruitment and be able to mitigate that big challenge?
So I think the first thing really is actually not specifically around recruitment, but around retention. So by providing a really good employee experience, not only are you going to retain the people you've already got, and obviously in any business, it's usually easier to keep the customers that you've got than it is to find new ones. And it's exactly the same with members of your team as well. So doing that is the first step really for me. And then by doing that, you're able to then be much more attractive as an employee. So I think that's kind of absolutely dead simple, 1.0 sort of stuff. But that would be my first thing really. And secondly, I'd sort of say really to think about your team members in exactly the same way as you would think about your customers. So you can't be all things to all people. Apple doesn't have a product range that you'd expect to find in Lidl or Aldi. So you really need to sort of focus on what you stand for, what you're offering, and tailor that to a market segment in exactly the same way as you would for a consumer.
You with your experience as an award-winning hotel,
multi-award winning.
Multi-award winning.
Let's get that out there right now.
Sorry about that. No. Georgian House.
Yeah.
Especially, let's stay on the topic of employees and the whole structure. Explain to us and our listeners what is unique about how the whole your whole employee structure was run, and how the hotel was run, and give us some insights on that, because I think that's very unique and interesting.
Okay, so for those listeners who don't know, Georgian House is a boutique townhouse style property, independent, family owned in London, quite near to Victoria, and so it doesn't have a lot of the things that are attractive to certain employees, like being able to work internationally, or certain benefits from staying in hotels, for example. So really we focused on providing a really good employee experience that people want to come and work in that nice environment where they can actually be part of running the hotel rather than just turning up and getting a paycheck. So really focused on creating a nice environment for them to work in, where they have the tools they need to do the job, where they actually enjoy coming to work and being part of a team, and looking after their well-being as well. And obviously well-being is a sort of kind of hot topic in the world in general at the moment. So by providing to suit those needs, because ultimately we all have well-being needs of some kind. We all have a financial well-being need to put a roof over our heads and feed ourselves and whatever, as well as things like physical, social and mental well-being. So that was the kind of the crux of it. And we recognized that because we're not as well known, that really the opportunity for us was to find people who maybe didn't have the years of direct experience in a particular role, but actually were the right cultural fit for us, and who wanted to be part of delivering that guest experience, and gave them the tools and the training they need to do to do that, and then probably even then go on and develop their career elsewhere. And that was kind of the model essentially for Georgian House. And as you say, we were quite successful in it.
A lot of time and effort, money into training.
Absolutely. So massive apprenticeship program that we had at Georgian House as well. We did a lot of stuff around Lean Six Sigma, which is not very widely used in hotels, or certainly a lot of service industries, more manufacturing focused, but really made some big gains from doing that from a business improvement perspective. Everything from 90-minute intensive training sessions to one-day workshops and beyond.
Adam, let me ask a maybe more broad question to that. Obviously, the whole idea of employer branding and getting employees to work in the industry is a hot topic at the moment, as you're no doubt aware. I don't think there's any country, be it the UK, France, Germany, in Europe, that isn't in desperate need of staff to work in at the forefront of the hotels. Why is that such a problem? Because clearly, the fact that every country is looking for staff should kind of give a hint that, it's important to do some of the things that you just mentioned that you did. But give me an idea of why that's become such a huge issue. Because I remember times where, it was cool, it was fashionable to work in hotels. And it seems that that's kind of run out a little bit for one reason or another. What's your take on that?
So I think different countries have different problems. I know that for a lot of people, certainly for team member level, it's not as attractive because as companies have tried to keep wages to a minimum and provide less to maximise profitability and return for their shareholders, that has generally made it a less attractive proposition.
Not helped, yeah.
There are certain countries where it is more of a profession, and certainly I think a lot of the economies where hospitality is part of quite a new economy. So I'm thinking like places like China, where it's exploding massively, but it's not huge, broad history in it, and Dubai and all those kind of places. But more sort of France, Spain, Italy, where it's a long-standing profession, where there's people having careers going on into their 50s and 60s. Yeah. It is more attractive. Also, economically, certainly in the UK, we've got record low unemployment, and where there is more competition and less sort of supply, it's only natural that people will go for things which are perhaps seems more glamorous or even just slightly better paid. So it is a broad issue, but I think a lot of companies need to help themselves and also help the industry by going back to that thing we talked about at the start of providing a better experience to make it more attractive.
Right. Tell me, Adam, because I'm sure that that your profile is an interesting and a unique one as to the awards and awards. As you, awards. I hope you. There Thank we go. You. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But it's not just about the awards. It's about the whole Georgian House thing. You work with your own company now with Rowledge Associates. Tell me a little bit about the process and because it's a career choice that you would maybe not necessarily expect in a sense that when you've been on a GM level, it's usually quite fashionable to stay in that and move hotels, get to a big international chain, work anywhere from Asia to South America to North America. You chose a very different path and chose to stay in and around the UK with your professional mindset, but obviously now give keynotes around the world. Give me your reasoning behind that, because you'll forgive me for saying this, but I'm sure there were other options.
Absolutely, and I had a number of offers whilst I was at Georgian House, and have had since as well, and some very exciting ones that most people would jump at the chance at. But for me, I had such a fantastic experience working at Georgian House, and really sort of honed what my values and my beliefs were around, and wanted to help more businesses to be like Georgian House, really. So right. For me, the best way to do that, to impact the most people, was to start my own business and go into other businesses to help them. And as you say, keynote speaking, not just in the UK but around the world, to reach the bigger audiences. I think it's certainly not a lifestyle or a career that's for everyone. But it's certainly working for me at the moment.
So our first episode was in the light of Fritz and me founding the companies, and tell us about your story. You just left Georgian House and you started Rowledge Associates. What were your biggest challenges, and what are you working on in building up your new consulting firm? So
biggest challenges, that is a good question. That's the first one that stumped me a little bit. I think really it's just getting used to a different way of working. So that it's not so much a challenge but more of an adjustment, I guess. So far the things that I've been doing have been quite varied. So the speaking, obviously you mentioned, I had the great privilege of going out to Japan and doing some training relating to the Rugby World Cup. So it wasn't like the All Blacks coach or anything. But
we're not going to talk about the performance of England in that specific case.
Yeah. I can't remember where Germany came in the Rugby World Cup, but
fair point.
So that was an exciting project, and I've been doing some conference speaking since, and I've got some really exciting work coming up later this year, and also in the new year as well. Not just in hospitality, but in other industries such as retail, publishing companies, and so on. Because people are people at the end of the day, and helping organisations get the best out of their teams is something that everyone in every industry needs to do.
A bit more personal. I mean, we know each other now for a year or so, and you do a lot wanting to help other people. You're always giving first, mentoring companies, or also, as you said, doing keynote speeches, helping other colleagues in the industry. Where does that come from? Where is your hospitality gene? Where does it originate from? Is it in your family? Do your parents do hotels, or when you were at school?
I'm the first person certainly that I know of in my family to work in the industry, but I just fell into it really, looking for a part-time job when I was 16 for some money to do stuff with, and had a really good experience there.
Wait, stuff such as
really boring stuff like bowling or the cinema, but but actually, although the hotel I worked in was probably kind of less close to what I would imagine spending my career in hotels in. It was a big conference hotel. Had a really great manager there. I was a banqueting manager and I was a waiter. I just fell in love with it. So that's where that developed from. And my brother now works in hospitality as well, in HR actually. So I've sort of like to think I've inspired him. It was just kind of something which a lot of people in the UK do come into the industry in that way. We need to be better at keeping those, it's certainly something that I would advocate to any parent. It is a great experience. You can learn a lot, and actually you can earn more and progress quicker than you can in many other sort of more traditional sectors as well. And those skills are very transferable, as I think I've proved. So.
Adam, tell me, related to the whole idea of HR and retaining talent. There's a growing trend that we've seen across the industry for a couple of years now, is that people get educated in hospitality, get some experience in hospitality, and then move on to other industries where the hospitality skill set, the people and all of that comes with it, seems to be very attractive. Why is it so complicated for us to keep the people that seem to be very good with hospitality in hospitality, and they all run off to do banking, consulting? I know that we both do it, but let's forget that for a second. But why is it so complicated? Because clearly the industries that they then go to have to do with people in a very different fashion than you would have to do within hotels and hospitality.
So I think we shouldn't necessarily obsess about you are always going to lose some people for whatever reason. Everyone has different motivations. So whilst hospitality you can obviously earn very good salaries, it might be that someone is held on earning just the most money and actually they don't care about necessarily some of the other stuff, and that's fine. That's up to them. But I think where we need to focus is on losing people who we should not be losing for those kind of silly reasons, just not looking after them. And whilst we might not pay the best as an industry, you still need to be competitive, and people obviously have financial needs and you have to kind of cater to those. I like to think that certainly the reason I don't feel like I have left the industry as such, but I'm still quite heavily involved, and I didn't leave the industry for any reasons of it wasn't paying well enough. I had good salary and fantastic benefits, and loved working at Georgian House. I know I could have had good pay and enjoyed working in other places, but the motivation was more to be able to help other businesses to do that, and obviously not totally selflessly. I am charging people for the privilege, but Brian said, I do a lot of mentoring, whether it be for individuals or businesses, and working with schools and colleges and universities to help them deliver to their students the best experience they can to hopefully get more people into the industry and stay in the industry.
Right. Let me ask one more question regarding that topic, Adam. If we look at the industry, and you said you work with universities and all of that stuff, and I realize that we both have a mutual friend in that, with a certain bold guy from the UK. Tell me how important that is to sensibilize maybe or create awareness at that level already, where, let's be fair, people are probably more easily influenced at a younger age in the sense of that, because the university education obviously is very much geared towards business and the studies of business, naturally, as I'm sure you're aware, economics and financial accounting and all that comes with it, which is an important part, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But where does the people business end up in the current ways of education, and is there maybe not enough done in some ways in that regard? It
definitely depends on the institute
Fair.
For sure,
Yeah.
and the focuses of the people who are the senior leaders in the course. For me, it should be more of a focus, but I also think we shouldn't forget that there are a lot of people who are studying non-hospitality degrees who also have the skill sets to bring into the industry. So that you might have people at one hospitality university or hotel school who are studying that, but go off to specialise in the finance and economic side of the industry. But equally, you could have people studying at X university in the UK studying math or economics who would be financial analysts or financial controllers, etc. And I think the other thing that is quite often forgotten is people rightly focus on, but sometimes over sort of obsess about is getting into schools and colleges, and that's obviously very important. But actually, there is a huge pool of talent in people who are perhaps had a career in one industry and then are nearing retirement and just want to do something a little bit different, whether that's full-time or part-time, or people who are returning to having careers after having children, or maybe have had an illness which has made that they can't work, and people with disabilities and homeless people and all those kinds of things. So I think you really have to look at the whole picture to be able to do that better.
Changing topic a bit, and looking at the role of technology in a hotel, in the industry, especially connected to processes and employees. Often you think of automation, and directly everybody working in hotels thinks, oh, I'm losing my job and I should be afraid of working with technology. The management thinks, okay, cool, we can automate much more and we can reduce costs or increase revenues. What's your approach? And I know that you specialize on that too. What's your approach on implementing technology, and what should hotels focus on when doing that, especially focusing on staff and internal processes?
Definitely. So I think the first thing really is just to not have technology for the sake of having technology. There's some really cool stuff out there, but quite a lot of it is a bit sexy, but you don't actually need it quite often. And it is an investment that you need to get a return on, like anything else. Given the situation where we're in, where we have a huge shortage of people, I don't think people necessarily should be worried about losing their jobs. Certainly not in our generation, and probably the generation afterwards. But being able to adapt to work with the technology, but then finding the right technology for your business and how that all kind of fits together to work alongside the team that you have.
let me break it down real quick and ask you for a very precise and concrete answer. I'm not sure there is one. If we've talked about pay a lot, Adam, and I realize that pay, if you don't pay your staff well, then obviously you're going to be screwed in one way or another, right? Set aside pay. Can you give me one or two concrete examples of things that you have seen implemented or have maybe implemented yourself that have really had an effect on either staff staying or staff joining a place that normally would have maybe some trouble recruiting? And like I said, I realize pay is still probably right up there as number one and is in some destinations a sincere problem. But set aside the financial aspect for a second.
Yeah, I think the number one for me, if I was to sort of come to any company was looking to solve those problems, would be the training and development, because not only are you giving them the skills to be able to deliver their job better, whether that be in terms of customer experience, upselling, productivity, whatever, you're also investing in them as a person, and that does make a massive difference to a lot of people. Not everybody, obviously, but that kind of the feeling of being invested in. We've got a beautiful soundtrack here.
I was gonna say, you can tell we're live by the background sounds. Yeah.
Someone's trying to tell me something, but seriously, it's that's probably the number one thing for me, and that can fit really nicely on technology. So a lot of people, like you say, are using automation to make things quicker or faster, or remove human element. But actually, there is a lot of stuff that you can do, like the Lean Six Sigma stuff I mentioned earlier, which can achieve those things without technology, and then you can actually put that budget towards something else.
Yeah, I mean, for us also in our experience, we working with some hotels is working with new technology allows you actually to hire cross-industry, because suddenly you don't need to know how to do a 17-step check-in process on maybe a more complicated hotel reservation system, PMS. Did you see that? Did you work with hotels and, for example, implement specific tools to make it easier for their staff to work at the hotel and be able to also maybe search for new kind of profile?
Yes, I think that there's a couple of things there. One is using the technology to allow the team more time to do their job better. That's focusing on the guests or whatever else it is, but also by choosing the right technology. We've all been in those businesses where we've inherited a piece of tech or something which is an absolute bag of nails, and that actually has a detrimental effect on the employee experience. And I actually didn't leave the hotel, but I moved to a different department in one property purely because I just couldn't deal with the fact that we had this really terrible technology. It was much earlier in my career, I should say. But I was young, and potentially those are the kind of people who might then leave the industry because they think, God, I don't want the stress of having to deal with 300 people checking in with 2 receptionists, and we've got a PMS system that doesn't even know which room people are supposed to be in. And
Windows 97.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was even that advanced, but yeah. So I think those are the kind of decisions that people need to be looking to make when they're thinking about their tech strategy. And actually, it's not a tech strategy and a people strategy; it's a business strategy, and those things are very much integrated.
Let me fly somewhere else with you now, Adam. Let me take you to the UK, and I realize that obviously with being involved in the Hospitality Institute here in the UK, you're probably the right guy to ask this. Give me a brief rundown of how we're doing in the industry in the UK. I mean, the obvious topic, Brexit, I got it out of the way right at the beginning, so I'm not going to ask this again. You've said that there's some pros and cons that might come with it. There's obviously some other things that have influenced this. Currency is something you already mentioned. How's the industry doing as a general kind of overview? The one thing that every industry seems to be doing at the moment is crying how everything is terrible, and then when you speak to people, things don't seem to be quite that bad. I imagine there's maybe a difference also between London and some of the greater rural areas of the UK. If you could maybe say a word about that as well in relation to the two.
Definitely. So, how long have I got?
However long you need, my friend.
I think so. I'll talk mostly about hotels,
right?
Yeah,
of course.
But I know it is important to remember that it is a much wider sector. So, the different things affecting different sectors. I know that rents is a big issue specifically for restaurants, and then we've seen a lot of individual restaurants and chains recently go into voluntary arrangements for liquidation and so on and so forth. Things like business rates, which is just another tax essentially that we have here, has been a big impact. Companies that do good thing, the right sort of simple things well generally my experience of doing well, and not complicating things. It's where people maybe necessarily have taken on too much debt and expanded too quickly, or wrong site is quite often a big challenge. But profitability is a challenge. The cost of everything is going up, and as we have more supply coming into the market, that obviously creates an impact on demand, which has an impact on rates, and the math thereafter is fairly simple. But I think by looking at where you can achieve cost savings, but also then focus more on the guest experience to drive more direct bookings, drive more repeat business, is obviously a big focus area for a lot of businesses. But then also using the training that you can invest in to help to become more productive, and just looking at every single cost line and every supplier within that cost line, and having to go back and renegotiate, or take a sort of quite difficult but honest look sometimes and say, do we need that? What value is that adding to the business, to the guest experience? And making decisions therefore. But it's definitely a challenge. And I know that UK Hospitality, who are the kind of body here in the UK that do the kind of the lobbying side of things, the Institute of Hospitality is much more focused on developing management standards and people within the business. But UK Hospitality doing a great job of working with the government to, we just had this new sector deal for tourism and hospitality, which is going to make a big impact. So there is stuff going on in the background to try and help with this, but the outlook is interesting, I think. And as for London and the regions, definitely a completely different picture. STR data will be able to tell you far much more about that than I can, but it's crazy
Insane.
Difference when you look at the stats on the presentations at the conferences and whatnot. So I think quite fortunate really to be in the position of being in London, where you've got constant demand all year at a fairly decent price.
Can you explain to me the mystery of London? Because it's just such a powerhouse in probably most industries, but especially also in terms of travel and obviously the fact that you have 38 airports around the city is what it feels like, at least. It obviously helps the idea of hotels filling up the rooms here. But explain to me, what makes London so magical? I mean, yes, it's an international city. It's a language that most countries will accept as probably a second language to their country, or to their mother tongue in the countries. But there must be more than that, because every statistic you look at, London's growth is just not slowing down. I realize it's slowed down maybe compared to what it was at some point in time, but it's still pretty impressive for the fact that the city is bursting out of all edges, what it seems like with tourists and visitors. What makes it so special for hotels and so profitable?
Quite an expansive question, I guess. But I mean, it's obviously a very attractive real estate market. So that's certainly one reason why we've seen a lot of development on the supply side. As for tourists, I mean, I like coming to London with my family, and it is a nice place to go. There's so many different quite distinctive pockets of town that there's something to appeal to everyone, I guess. And having that worldwide reputation is just really the heritage, I guess. Whether it's Harrods or the Queen or Hamleys or whatever it is that you like, the theatre
in that particular order. I hope.
But also, there is a huge amount of work that goes on into making it an attractive destination for conferences, for world exhibitions, for sporting events. Obviously things like London 2012 had you can have huge debate over whether that was a success in terms of what it promised to deliver in terms of sport in the UK and the stuff at grassroots level. But I think in terms of showcasing London, that's been fantastic as well. And I think hotels are probably still seeing the benefit of that.
You said before, jumping back a bit to the Georgian House and your own experience, you said before you can't be everything for everyone.
Yeah.
And still, your Georgian House in a big city, you guys decided to position yourself very specifically to a certain market with your whole Harry Potter style rooms and experience. How did that impact your strategy? Where does that come from? Is that because of your location and what's around? Can you tell us a bit more? And did you really see benefits out of having a clear strategy and having a clear target market?
Yeah, so I should just say, in case that anyone from Warner Brothers or J.K. Rowling is listening, that they are Wizard's Chambers, not...
sorry.
That's fine. The Wizard Chambers were fantastic for Georgian House, and they did a lot for the hotel. I think, by you can spread yourself very thinly by trying to chase. So there are certain geographic regions that we did not pursue business from because it just would have been challenging to even get into that market and spend a lot of time for very little return. So predominantly a North American, European and domestic leisure markets. So the hotel did expand into domestic sort of small amount of corporate and meetings business, but you just there is so much competition, and other people do certain things better, or even if they don't execute them better operationally, they are better placed to execute them from a sort of sales perspective. So you have to recognize your relative strength in those markets versus the relative attractiveness of that.
Give me a very quick side story here, Adam, if I may. Give me the funniest or the stupidest story that happened with those Wizard Chambers. I imagine that something must have happened, like the guest ordered room service and gave you Harry Potter spells or something, or wanted to convert the invoice, or like something funny must have happened. I mean, is there anything you can think of off the top of your head?
Less funny, but
or
it is it's
remarkable. Maybe is the better word.
Yeah, people are really really into it. It's not something which I used to sort of joke and say they were one of the biggest successes as a product that the hotel has, but I really did not like Harry Potter or anything wizardry. So
are you a Lord of the Rings fan or
no,
nothing at all?
Unless it's vaguely believable,
you're out.
I'm not really interested. So, but yeah, people would spend a lot of money on it, and the lead time for those rooms, just to give you an example, is about double the lead time for a normal hotel bedroom, because people they do a Harry Potter trip, so they will go on the Warner Brothers studio tours. They will go to King's Cross to Platform 9 and whatever it is.
I can tell you're very much into it. Yeah,
they got this the walking tours. The full. The full Monty shebang, basically. Yeah, we've had people who have done proposals in the Wizard Chambers, and one person.
Please tell me they were wearing they had the whole hat business and gown business going.
People do come down to breakfast with the whatever it is in the hats and the ones, and so proposal. One guest I particularly remember had something made which played a certain song. I can't remember if it's like a song that mentioned, but it was all done out of this uniquely carved thing that played music. Excuse the lack of detail. One person who had a cake which was probably about the size of this desk, which I know is no use to your listeners with their hands, but massive cake for their son's birthday, and they literally ate one tiny piece of it. I can't remember how much it cost. I think it was about £300, something like this, for this huge cake. So that the team were very fortunate to be able to enjoy the rest of that, and it's just phenomenal the amount of money that people will spend on this type of an experience. So I know themed rooms, afternoon teas are very, very popular, but I've never seen any sort of level of interest in anything like this.
Adam, another topic that is obviously not so fortunate, or wasn't fun for the UK, that is quite recent, that I didn't want to not talk about, is obviously the whole Thomas Cook scenario of the way it happened. I think enough has been said and read in the press, and I don't really want to go into much detail, but give me your take on that, because I know it affected a particularly large amount of UK citizens that were stuck in some cases, got locked out of hotel rooms and what else not. Was there? I don't want to talk too much about the management of Thomas Cook and whether that could have done better, because probably neither of us are in the position to answer that. But give me a little bit of your insight in terms of, because I know that you're an independent hotelier and you stand very much for the independence of businesses. How important is that these days? Because we see a lot of brands. We see the big Marriotts and Hiltons of the world. We see travel brands like Thomas Cook and TUI, and to a certain point, everyone thought that they were invincible because it's the big brands, right? Now, Thomas Cook quite desperately proved that was not necessarily the case. But how important is that rivalry to continue, or rivalry in quotation marks, between the independent world and coming up with creative stuff there, as opposed to the big kahunas?
So I think there is pretty much every conference I go to, there's a thing, right? What's brands or independence, and truth be told, that they both need to coexist. Then they're I guess in competition for some people who just want something based on price and location, but they offer very different experiences, and you can't say that it's not going to continue and then they're not going to be fighting for the same guests sometimes, but for me, you know, I have a loyalty program, for example, for one of those groups. I won't say which one, but and I will, if I'm staying in a city where I just need something which is a hotel, then I will look for those. If I'm looking for something for an occasion, or a bit of a nice treat, then I'm probably not going to go for a Xbox standard. And I think even though they're introducing lots of these kind of more boutique and interesting brands, I think for me some of those work and some don't. The more distinctive they are, the better. They're never going to be able to create the magic that an independent hotel will from a personalization perspective or a real focus on the guest experience.
Give me an example, and we're not going to slaughter anyone on the podcast, but give me an example of a boutique hotel maybe that you think works, because you said there's some that work for you and there's others that don't. Would you mind giving me, just because obviously you travel, like I said, you give keynotes around the world, you've spoken to some of the brands probably in person. Give me an example of a boutique, because we had boutique hotel on the podcast last episode already, we talked about it briefly. Give me an example of one that works for you, which could be local, doesn't have to be international.
So there's a couple really from a brand perspective that are quite interesting. One which it was actually it's an Indigo, but it's a particular couple of properties that they have in the UK where I actually heard the general manager speak at a tech conference earlier this year where they're using augmented reality as part of their rooming experience. So I think they are quite, although it's one brand and the brand itself is not particularly exciting, that the way they localize things is very interesting. And then another brand which I've not actually had experience yet, but I will be later this year, is an IHG brand called Even, which is very much wellness focused. So I'm very interested to see what they're doing. But I think either having that sort of really local focus or something different to just we're cool, we've got some funky stuff on the wall, and we all walk around in quite frankly, like I'm dressed now, doesn't really do much for me. I think there's got to be something very distinctive about it.
Is it just distinctive, also authenticity, and as you say, local? Is it sustainability? Are these factors which nowadays with Fridays for Future, traveling is not always seen that positively anymore in our society? Do you think that this is an important factor for hotels to differentiate themselves and also push as their marketing message to the younger generation?
Definitely. I don't think it's necessarily just younger generations, but so sustainability, although it's something which I have a concern about, is not a lot of people are more passionate about it than I am. But even so, when I do stay in that chain of hotels, I will use the sort of the hanger to say, actually no, I don't really need any housekeeping service, because I don't, and it's a waste. And obviously you get rewarded for that as well. But again, it's about knowing your customer and what's important to them. But certainly I know that Florence, who is my successor as general manager of Georgian House, much more focused on sustainability and that kind of thing. So that's a really exciting development, I think, for Georgian House, as well as continuing the great stuff we did on a people front.
We just spoke, Fritz just mentioned the bankruptcy of Thomas Cook and all of the hotels which also suffered a lot on it. Speaking about you helping independents to be more independent in a sense, what do you think it is important for hotels to also focus on a variety of the distribution channels and make sure that they don't depend on a certain brand or on a certain wholesale or booking.com? And if so, how did you guys manage that at the Georgian House? Do you have any tips for hoteliers listening, and how you can build up a nicely distributed or variety in your distribution channel?
Definitely. So I think one thing actually just on Thomas Cook, which I meant to say when you asked the original question, was I really was quite shocked to hear of some of those stories. I think yes, it's difficult when you're a business and you're placed in that position because of what's happened to one of your part of your supply chain essentially. But kind of doing the right thing is always the right thing, and you're not going to do yourself any favors by doing that. And obviously, it was quite clear that those people were never going to pay that. To be honest, but I think definitely sort of variety is the spice of life from that point of view, and a lot of people give OTAs a bit of a bashing as well. That's kind of one of my bigger frustrations when you go to a lot of these events. They definitely have their place, and they're an incredibly valuable tool because they just give you the reach that you wouldn't be able to otherwise get, specifically as an independent. So by forming really good partnerships with them and working with them, you can actually have some real success. I mean, I was interviewed on Sky News earlier this year or last year about the kind of the whole Competitions and Markets Authority rulings on that, and there's definitely a few things which I don't mind saying that I think they do that they shouldn't do and are still doing, even though they've passed.
They're bullshit, is what you're saying.
Well, that's not for me to say. But by the same token, I have to say, whilst they do some things which they definitely shouldn't, I think one of the things that really impressed me was that there was one particular partner that we did have an issue with at Georgian House, and it was resolved directly with our account manager. But then I went to be a panelist at a conference a couple of months later, and someone who was very senior in that organisation was on the panel as well. And at the stage where we just sort of said hello to each other, I was really sorry to hear about the situation that occurred. I'm glad that we did manage to resolve it for you, but next time if you have any issues, please just come directly to me. And you think, this is one of the biggest companies in the travel industry in the world, certainly bigger by revenue than any hotel group, and yet you've got this kind of level of attention to detail that they don't know he's doing that because I'm on a panel with him at a conference, but he didn't have to, and I think they should be commended.
And I think it doesn't happen to every hotelier, to be honest.
Yeah, just the multi-award winning one.
Multi being the key word.
Yeah. I'm going to get a reputation, but no, seriously, I think they definitely played a big part in the commercial success of Georgian House, and I think the key is really to work out how you can get the best out of them, just like you would with whether it's a food supply. You want to get the best quality and the best price, and you put effort into that rather than just signing up to Booking.com, Expedia, or whatever, and expecting it to work perfectly. Like any relationship, whether it be personal or professional, you have to invest in it.
Yeah. Adam, it's been great. Thank you very much for your time. We have a thing on the podcast where we always end with 3 questions with the request for 3 short-ish answers. Okay. So let's see how we do on that. The first question is a very easy one. My favorite part about hospitality is
variety.
The last place I stayed at, which was not home. Naturally. Which
was not home. That would have been a hotel called the Gate in Ginza in Tokyo, I think, from memory.
And how was it?
It was great. I was only there for a short amount of time, unfortunately, but it was a beautiful hotel. So yeah, hopefully get back.
Funny enough, the German rugby team stayed there as well. That's why you probably missed them. That's a different story. And the last question is also a very easy one. The next big thing in hospitality, in my opinion, is that's a tough one.
Hopefully, the realization by employers that they need to put their people first to achieve their business success.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's it for this episode, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. As always, don't forget to check out what there is to know about Smack at smack.media or on our YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook accounts. We'll see you next time.